Elizabeth Barrett Browning famously wrote in the 1800s, "How do I love thee? Let me count the ways." In more modern times, they always saying, "Love me tender, love me sweet, never let me go." Hi, this Mary fills with 10-minute Torah, day number 1 of a double Torah portion, Chukat Balak. So much to cover in these two portions. I don't know how they ended up being double teamed. Got to get started somewhere. So let's start with Midbar, Numbers chapter 19, verse 1. Yahweh spoke to Moshe and to Aaron, saying, "This is the law of the Torah, which Yahweh has commanded, saying, Speak to the children of Israel that you bring you a red heifer, a perfect one, in which there is no blemish, and on which a yoke has never come. And you shall give it to Eleazar the priest, and he shall bring it outside the camp, and shall slay it before him. And Eleazar the priest shall take some of its blood with his finger, and sprinkle some of its blood 7 times toward the front of the tent of appointment. And the heifer shall be burned before his eyes. He burns its hide, its flesh, its blood, and its dung. The priest shall take some cedar wood and hyssop and scarlet, and throw them into the midst of the fire, burning the heifer. Then the priest shall wash his garments, shall bathe his body in water, and afterward come into the camp. But the priest is unclean until evening." It continues on with the ritual of the red heifer and for its uses of setting apart those who are defiled because of death. What does this have to do with love? Well, I'm kind of glad you asked that question. This particular command pertains to a category of commands called chukim, plural there, singular chukat. A chukat is a command or an ordinance of the Torah that is beyond rational understanding. We see the command, we hear the ritual, we hear the details of it, but it's not necessarily clear why. It's just that, well, that's what he said. Among other things are not mixing wool and linen together as far as weaving a garment. The laws of Nida, that is the regulations pertaining to women in their cycle of the month and how that they are to be cleansed. Add to that then the ashes of the red heifer and this particular ritual. We don't know why cedar and hyssop and scarlet are necessary, at least to be thrown in the fire. They have some symbolism, but why throw them in the fire? And why is it that the one who initiates this ritual is unclean, as well as the one who cleans up the aftermath becomes unclean? So people become unclean in order to make people clean. So why then, if we do not understand what's going on, why are we required to keep the command? Good question. Best answer that I can come up with. In the book of Yochanan, John, chapter number 14. Let's read a few verses, beginning with verse number 11. Yeshua says this, "Believe me that I am in the Father, and the Father in me. Otherwise, believe me because of the work themselves. Truly, truly, I say to you, he who believes in me, the works that I do, he shall do also, and greater works than these shall he do, because I go to my Father. And whatever you ask in my name, that I shall do, in order that the Father might be esteemed in the Son. If you ask whatever in my name, I shall do it." Oh, that's good words. Verse 15, "If you love me, you shall guard my commands." And that's normally the way we read that. If you love me, you shall guard my commands. So the motivation Yeshua is eliciting from us here and the obedience of his commands is our love for him. Because you love me, you will just simply do what I ask. If love then is the motivating factor, then the response to his commands, I just don't believe you have to do all that, no longer applies to us. That's not even a reasonable response. Consider this. A young married couple starts out on their new life together. It's very idealistic. It's very honeymoonish. It's almost a fantasy world of expectations. That world gets interrupted by the small things. How one spouse pushes the toothpaste up out of the tube as opposed to squeezing it from the top. How you make the bed, how you mow the yard, how you cook the food, how you clean the house, how you dress. I didn't know you snored, and on and on and on. The list can go. Surprise, I didn't know that about you. The courtship version of who it is that we fall in love with may not be 100% the version that we end up with after we walk down the aisle. Now, that is in no way reflecting on my personal marriage. Laura and I have a perfect marriage. We're still as much in love now as we were when we first married, and I love the way she does everything. Of course, she loves the way I do all things too. Mm-hmm. We learn to deal with whatever rises up because of one particular motivating factor, love. And you realize that love is not that emotional rush that you get when you're in the presence of a person, although that can still happen and does still happen. It is more about commitment. It is more about learning the inward heart and yearnings and dreams of your spouse. It's more about learning to love the whole person, not just the attracting parts that you initially found in them, the way that they express themselves, the way they look, the way they dress, the way their personality came forward. You learn to love folks through the worst of themselves. When they're falling apart, when they're spastic, when they're upset, you learn to love them even then. And so instead of reading this verse 15, if you love me, the emphasis being on love, if you love me, you'll keep my commands. Let's express it just slightly different, where Yeshua said, if you love me. If we love Yeshua for being Yeshua, not because I can ask whatever I need in his name and he will do it. Not because I'm going to be able to be empowered to do great works as he has done and is doing. I don't love him because of the benefits that I might receive from him. But I love him, for who he is. And if I read the word and I only hear what he says and read the accounts of what he has done and hear his words about what is coming, if I'm only loving him because I'm afraid that if I don't love him, his anger is going to be expressed in judgment toward me by some means. If I only love him because if I don't love him, I'm not going to get my prayers answered, then even the motivation to follow his commands has got to be skewed. But if we can learn to love Yeshua for who he is, the very essence of his being, the very heart of his character, looking into his spiritual face and loving him for him, then even the chukim, those things that we don't understand, we don't appreciate, we don't want to do in the Torah, we embrace them and do them with all of our might because we love him. And that's all the motivation that we need. We'll see you again tomorrow. Until then, shalom.